How do you go about finding that thing, the nature of which is totally unknown to you? That is the question the ancient philosopher Plato asked centuries ago. And that's the question I want to try to answer today. How do you go about finding your path to creative work? How do you know when you're on the path? I believe the answer lies in your intuition, your inner compass, in your body. These elements and these principles are what I like to refer to as your feminine superpowers. And by the way, for the men in the room, these are not just superpowers available to women. They're very important for you to look at as well. As we think about our current society and culture, masculine energy really rules. It rules the way we run business, the way we build teams, the way we produce results and outcomes. It's founded in logic and systematic thinking. It's rational. I think that a feminine energy is rising. And I believe this feminine energy is the solution. Actually, it's the power to helping you unlock your greatest creative potential. The philosopher and poet Rilke said, "Be the questions to the answers that you seek. The mystery and the meaning discovered there." Feminine energy begs questions, not solutions. Feminine energy is compassionate, kind, generous, creative. I think feminine energy is the key to tapping into your greatest creative potential. Most of my clients come to me with their heart in their heads. And I spend most of my time trying to get them back into their hearts, back into their bodies where they can feel their hearts and their body's greatest call, where they can tap into their intuition. Albert Einstein said, the intuition is an intuitive gift. It's a sacred gift. But the rational mind is a faithful servant. In our society, we have really built a culture that honors the servant but has forgotten the gift. So I invite you to open your mind to the possibility that business can be more of an intuitive endeavor. My personal journey to using intuition to build my creative work started about a decade ago. I remember it was like it was yesterday. I was moving to Portland, Oregon, following a divorce, starting my life over. It was the height of the recession. And I was actually driving down to Southern California to pick up my things from storage. And if those of you who haven't been here, I was in the Shasta Mountain Wilderness, which is just below Shasta Mountain. And as you come into that area of Northern California, it's this expansive, barren wilderness. As far as the eye can see, just fields and fields. And so I'm on the phone with my father because I'm bored and I'm going to be in this car for quite a while. And my father and I always bonded over dreaming and scheming and coming up with creative things we could do in the world. And we were kind of on one of those conversations. And I said to him, you know what I really want to do? I really want to help women. I feel called to help women lead more fulfilling and meaningful lives, to help them honor their truths and their passions and their callings. That was a decade ago. That's exactly what I'm doing now. Fast forward 5 years later, I was in Portland at the height of my career, managing a community, a global community of people looking for creative work. I was enjoying the respect of my peers and a status for a position that people really coveted in the community. I was on cloud 9, but I was feeling restless. Something wasn't quite right inside. And I knew it, and yet I kept trying to stuff it down. I kept trying to say to myself, nope, I'm happy where I'm at. This is enough. This is going to do it for me. And unfortunately, that didn't work. There were some changes happening in the company, so it prompted me to hire a coach. And this coach and I originally started out because I wanted to start my own business, but that just felt too scary. So I put that aside, and instead we negotiated a $25,000 raise for myself and a promotion. So I had to stick around a little bit longer. Fast forward another year, still restless. It is still not feeling completely right for me. And I was in a meeting with a colleague of mine who had become one of my best friends, and we were at the executive level. And she was the VP, I was one of the directors. We were talking about budgets and resources and how are we going to manage, all the changes that are happening in the company. And in a fit of frustration, I just looked at her and said, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I can do this anymore. And she was my friend, and she encouraged me by saying, I think it's time for you to quit. And she was right. And she knew it. She knew I'd been wanting to start my own business, and she could tell it was building inside of me. And it was like she'd given me permission to really consider this as an option for myself. And once she did, just wouldn't stop. It was like a creature was following me around day in and day out, like, excuse me, I'd like a little more light, a little more water, maybe some air to breathe. You got something up there? I want to thrive. I want to live. Give me something to do. And I could not shut it up. It wasn't just weeks later from that conversation with my colleague, I started talking to other colleagues and peers and friends and family members and mentors, and I knew it all so well. It was my intuition begging me to listen. So I did. I went down the hall and had a conversation with my boss. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life because I cared deeply about him. I cared deeply about the people I worked for and the work I was doing in the world. I did not want to hurt anyone. I just wanted to slowly transition into the work I felt called to do. I had that really hard conversation. But when I walked out of the room and down the hall, I never felt more alive. I felt like I could breathe. I felt freedom like I'd never felt before. And I was so inspired. Over the next couple of months, while they hired a replacement, I worked on my business. And I would wake up between 2 and 4 a.m. almost every night, super creative. And I'd get out these big Post-it notes, and I would write my ideas and paste them on the walls of my house. And I'd wake up in the morning like, whoa, what happened in my house? Because I was so inspired and so alive by what I was feeling called to do. And then 2 months go by. I've got the branding down, the marketing down, the strategy down, and I'm on my own. I'm on my own. I'm on my own. I'm on my own. Like that just kept going over and over in my head. I have a mortgage to pay. I have adult things to take care of. There's no money coming in. What am I going to do? And that fear, coupled with a few other things, sent me reeling. My intuition had not prepared me for what would happen next. As I really embodied this new belief system around my business and what I wanted my life to look like, it was like I'd come out of a cave and was kind of blinking. And this poem by Joyce Sutphen really, for me, means a lot because if you know the poem, it's from Out the Cave, and it talks about you come and you emerge from this cave and you're blinking because you haven't seen the sun in a while and you really don't know how to respond to the world around you. And that's how I felt. I didn't have my footing. The identity that I once had was suddenly gone. And on top of that, I suffered a great tragedy in my family just 2 months after leaving my company. And it sent my whole family reeling, and it triggered some core wounds from my childhood that I had to start dealing with. So I fell into a depression, and not a lot of people knew that that was happening. I was still trying to run my business and do the best I could to manage my health. But man, I was struggling. Just a blog post or a conversation with a client would send me to the couch in a 3-hour nap. So I went to the doctor and I said, what is wrong with me? And they said, you have adrenal fatigue. And adrenal fatigue is basically our body's way of shutting down to stress. Your adrenals are your body's way of responding to stress, and when you have it for way too long, for long sustained periods of time, you literally shut down. So my adrenals had stopped producing the hormones combating stress. My immune system shut down. No wonder I was sleeping 3 hours a day. taking naps and not being able to like really feel that creative energy I'd once felt. So under doctor's orders, I was instructed to rest. And my teachers and my mentors said to me, you need to start doing what feels creative, what inspires you, what feels like play and joy and love. And stop worrying about the branding and the marketing and the strategy right now. Just focus on what feels good. And so I did. As I started focusing on what felt like light and freedom and love, I started to heal myself. So I want to ask you today, can you allow yourself to be broken by the work that you do? But can you also allow yourself to be healed by your creative endeavors? You see, my work is a healing for me. As I started to follow what felt like freedom and what felt like light and move into that, I really started to come alive. One of my teachers, her name is Martha Beck, and she attributes this quote to the Buddha. And basically it goes like this: you always know the ocean because the ocean always tastes of salt. And by that same token, you always know enlightenment because enlightenment always feels like freedom, not comfort, not ease, but freedom. So I was following what felt like freedom and what felt like light and letting everything else go. And as a result, my business started to grow. The more inner work and healing I did on the inside, the greater the results were on the outside. I was actually creating a higher competitive advantage for myself by doing this inner work, by following my intuition, by doing the healing. You see, my business is not just a business, it's a spiritual practice. It's a healing for me, and it will always be that way because it is constantly pushing me to the limits of what I think is possible. It's constantly asking me to do more inner work so I can go bigger and stronger and higher and change the world. So I followed my intuition, and it led me down a road less traveled. And that road was hard, but I wouldn't have chosen any other way. So how can you let your intuition guide you towards your creative endeavors, towards the work that you're meant to do? In other words, may the feminine force be with you. In martial arts, there is a form of self-defense called Aikido. And Aikido is basically, when you translate it from Japanese to English, it translates in 3 parts. The first part is harmony, the second part is energy, and the third part is system. So here's a form of self-defense in a competitive sport where you have things like boxing, where you punch people in the face to win, right? Instead, with Aikido, you use the energy of your opponent and the energy around you to become more powerful. So how can you use the energy around you and within you to create interesting and creative work? Because I believe that as technology frees us up to do higher and higher work in the world, all work will be creative act. Our economy will be driven by our creative endeavors. So can you allow yourself to be healed by the work that you do? Can you allow yourself to be guided, pulled in the direction of the work you are meant to create? Can you embody these principles of feminine energy, compassion, creativity, intuition, spirit? Can you embody those things as much as you bring in branding and strategy and analysis and spreadsheets? That's important too. But we need this other piece as well. So can you unleash your feminine superpowers? And when you do, what will you create? Will you allow yourself to be transformed by the work that you do? And in doing so, might you also transform the world? Thank you.